We are talking in a series called Hold Fast, and last week talking about holding fast to God and His will, His plans for our lives, and who He is. You know, we're got to jump out of our own boat. You know, this phrase "hold fast" is an old sailor terminology, and they, would have tattoos and whatever that said it, but it was about holding on to the rigging, not losing grip of what you're supposed to be doing. And but for the purposes of our services and the messages that we talked about, it's not about holding on to ourselves and our own strength, but about holding on to God. Jumping out of our boat and jumping into His boat, right? And holding on to the riggings, holding on to His promises and what He has for us, and holding tight to Him. But today, I wanted to talk, and we're going to go to Jeremiah, but I wanted to talk about how, so many times we, go through these seasons of our life. God is calling us to new things. He's calling us to greater things all the time, right? Right? Okay. You guys going to talk to me? I don't want to be the only one talking here. But He calls us to great things. He asks of us to go do things for Him and with Him. And so many times we struggle because we're like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm ready. I'm not sure if I'm, old enough, or I'm not sure if I'm young enough. I'm not sure if I have the knowledge or whatever that it takes to do this. And so what we wanted to talk about today is that we hold on to Him. But it's not about our strength. It's not because we are good enough or that we are strong enough to do these things that God has planned for us. It's not because we have all that it takes or the knowledge. It's because He has it. And when we hold on to Him, it's so that we're not holding on to ourselves. But we have to realize that He's holding us. That He's got us. He's taking care of us, and He's planned these things for us to do in the world around us. And so we go to Jeremiah 1:4. It says, "Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you, and I ordained you a prophet to the nations." And so that's amazing that God's speaking this to him, but the interesting thing is Jeremiah, he's like, but God, there's always a but, right? There's always a but, right? I don't know about you, but so many times my first reaction when God asked me to do something, or maybe even, Tori asked me to do something, but Tori, I can't clean the dishes because I forgot how, as a joke, okay? I help with the dishes all the time. Dishes are spotless. Okay. But our first reaction when God asks us to move forward or asks us to do something, we're always like, but I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm good enough. And this is what happened here with Jeremiah. And he says, but God, oh Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a youth. See, he's struggling here with this thing that God is calling him to, this thing that God is asking of him. And he hasn't even told him what he wants to do yet, but he's like, I don't know, God, but I can't do it because I'm so young. I'm not sure. So whether it's that you're young, whether it's that you're older, you don't feel that you're not young enough anymore, whether it's that you're like, well, I didn't go to Bible college, or, I didn't take those online theological courses and, study all this stuff. God, how am I going to go out and do these things that you asked me to do? Now, those things are great. We need to learn. We need to grow. But what my point is that so many times we make an excuse, or we look at ourselves and say, I don't know if I can do this. And we forget that it's God telling us to go do this. Now, does God not know who we are? Does He not know how, capable we are, or what He has put into us? Does He not know how He's created us? That He's created us for good things and for His pleasure? Oh, come on. You guys are looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. But like so many, I will. But like so many times, there's just this thing in us. It's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know. God, you've asked me to speak or go and talk to this person at my job, but what if they ask me questions about the Bible and I don't know the answer? What if they ask me, why I believe and all these things about my life and I'm not ready to share these things? Or, come on. There's so many things that we come up with to say, I'm not ready. I don't know if I can do it. I'm too young. I'm too old. I don't have what it takes. And that's what Jeremiah is doing. But what we see here is God's not saying. He's not asking him. He's not coming to him because Jeremiah, has all that he needs. He's coming to him because God's saying, I have all that you need, and I have created you for these purposes, and I will always be with you, and I will never forsake you. I will always be there, be your strength. Don't lean on your own strength. Don't lean on your own knowledge or wisdom or what you have. Now, of course, we don't walk around just all dumb, but it's like so many times we're like, oh, but I need to be strong in this. I need to be strong in that, and then I'll go and do this. But so many times, our strengths are what get in the way of God doing something through us. He isn't looking for our strengths. He's looking for our weakness. He's looking for ways that he can move through us where we would never possibly be able to do it without him. In those areas that we're strong in, so many times we keep God from moving in his power and all that he has because we feel like we're strong enough. And so he's just like, I'm calling you. I'm telling you that this plan that I have for you was created just for you. That I've called each and every one of you to do something for me and with me. And it's not about how great you are, it's about how great I am. It's not how much you've done to prepare yourself. It's how much I've done to prepare you. That I am all you need, God says. I have everything that you need. Don't worry about what you have because I've got it all. I've got everything. Just trust me. Just trust me. And so as we talk about, jumping into the boat with God and holding on to him and who he is. When we jump into his boat, you realize that now he's the one carrying us. It's his boat, not ours. But so many times we're like, oh God, I'm jumping into your boat. I'm holding tight, hold fast to who you are and your plan for my life. And then all of a sudden we're like, start rowing or like, this boat's going because it's me, because I'm doing so much. And he's like, this is me. This is not you. I'm the boat. I'm the sails. I'm the rigging. The reason we're doing all this is because of me, not because of you. So we go back to Jeremiah. I don't know. I'm just a young chap. I'm a young guy. I don't know if I can do this. But the funny thing is that he has this question about who he is or that he's not good enough, but God has already given him the answer. See, he looks at himself. It's like he's looking at himself in the mirror and he's seeing himself and having these questions about himself. But the problem is we always have perceptions of ourselves that are not correct, right? That somebody say, oh, you're beautiful. Oh, you're so strong or you're so intelligent. And now maybe somebody here is like, yeah, I am. But most of the time we're like, oh, no, you don't understand. I have so much to work on. I have so, many things to do to be in that place or whatever, because we always perceive ourselves to be less than we really are, and we're just, it's this struggle within ourselves. But God is saying, don't see yourself. Yes, be weak. Yes, be humble. But see yourself like I see you. And how is that? That's a frail human being, but with God all over you, with the things of God placed in you and created by God for these specific purposes. See yourself like He sees you, which is strong and courageous, not because it's you so much, but because He's with you, because He's there. And He's ready to move through you. Wow. So Jeremiah, he says, God, I don't know. I'm just a young guy. I'm too young for this. But I love that God answered his question before he even asked it. So we go back to the beginning of the scriptures that we read. And Jeremiah's like, I'm too young. But God had just told him, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you to be a prophet to the nations. See, Jeremiah's life and our life, and we'll, see this in a couple of scriptures, but, because of what Jesus did on the cross, we bring this to the New Testament, and Jeremiah, it's not just one person that goes and speaks God's words to people. It's not just one person like, we have to give, our sins and our sorrows and all these things to the high priest and they can take it to God. But no, now Christ has done this great work for us so that we can all do these great things, so that we can all have this great call on our lives to do. It may not be a prophet. It may be. It may or may not be to be a missionary, to be a pastor, an evangelist. And it may be that, you're called to enter work, share the love of God to those around you. But we're all called. We're all ordained to do the purposes of God, to follow him and follow his leading and what he has for us. And he has something for us. And just like here with Jeremiah, he says, before I formed you, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. If you think about this with me, we think about holding on to God. It's like I'm holding on to him and his promises and all that he is. But think about this with me. He's telling Jeremiah and he's telling us. He says, you don't understand. Before you were flesh and blood, before you were here on this earth, it's like one of those guys, whenever those older guys that, they're like, before you were a twinkle in your daddy's eye, I was doing this and that, right? But I think about, God was like, hey, before you were even born, before you were a twinkle, I knew you. Before you were born, I was holding you in my hands. I was taking the thought of who you would be and who I had created you to be, and I was loving it, and I was praying for it, and I was forming it and fashioning it into what I had for you before you were born. I was taking who you were going to be and praying over it. Sanctifying. Sanctifying? He says, I've before you were born set you apart. What does that mean? It means that not all of us are called to do the same thing, that we're set apart. He didn't just take, all these people, I'm going to take them all up and, call them to do something, but it doesn't really matter who they are individually. No, he says you personally. I've taken you and you, all personally, and held you in my hands, and I've set you apart for a specific purpose and for a specific thing that I have for you. And I've called you holy. That's what being sanctified means. I've called you holy and set apart for me and for what I want to do through you. So how can you sit here and say, but I'm not old enough, but I'm too old, but I don't, know enough to do this. God says, I've created you for this. When you were not even born, I had set you apart and held you tightly, just loving you and creating you for this. God knew him. He knows us. Romans 8:28, it says, and we know that all things work together for the good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose, for whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed in the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Those he foreknew, he predestined. He knew us before. He didn't just get acquainted with us. He didn't just say, oh, hey, who are you? Let me get to know you right now that you're old enough, Oh, now that you've gone through that online theological course, hey, how's it going? I never knew who you were. But our Bible tells us that he knew us before we were formed. He knew us before we were created, before we were placed here on the earth, and he loved us. He set us apart, he sanctified us and called us holy and had a purpose and a plan for our lives. And he says, you're going to do it, not because you're strong enough, not because you have everything that you need, but because I have it. I have the strength. I have everything that you need. He formed him in the womb. I mean, we think about that, oh, well, I'm a product of my mother and my father, and we are. But I love the thought, that I think about, I don't know if you like C.S. Lewis, but this book, I think it's The Great Divorce. But this story, and I think I've talked about it before, but this picture of heaven and that, we think, oh, this flesh and blood, this, podium right here, this is the real deal. Look, like it's the real deal. But when you see the spiritual realm for what it really is, when we are in heaven, we see heaven. That the things that we've seen here are just ghostly, because this isn't reality. This is where we've been placed in our reality at the moment. But the real thing, the heavy things, are the things of heaven. Are God that in this book, it's just I don't know. I'm a picture person. Like I love these pictures that people create through words, and it's like they're stepping out of this bus, because apparently we take a bus to heaven. And feeling that, hey, I'm real. I can't see through my hand, but they step out into this heavenly realm, and all of a sudden they step out, and when they step out, they are ghostly figures, because they realize that reality, that the weightiness, that the things that are truly real are the things of heaven, the spiritual realm, and they step out onto the grass, and the blades of grass don't bend, because they're not strong enough, they're not heavy enough to even bend the blades of grass. The river that's running is so loud that it's deafening. They can't even hear because it's so loud, because it's so real, And I think that so many times we have trouble perceiving. Like I said, we have trouble perceiving things about ourselves, but we have trouble perceiving that these things that we are living through right now are amazing things. They feel real, but can we trust that God is the one that is everlasting? That God is the one that has all the strength and all the power, and the things of this world are just ghostly compared to who he is. I mean, if we grasp that, if we understand those things, then then how could we not hold on to who he is and say, it doesn't matter what you ask me to do. It doesn't matter what comes against me, because I know that you have all the power and all the glory and everything that I need, and you'll get me through. God appointed Jeremiah. He appointed Jeremiah. He appoints us. I mean, think about this. God's asking us to do these things, to walk forward in his purposes and his plan. And we're like, I don't know. He's like, no, I've created you for this. I've set you apart. I've called you holy and said, this is my plan and my will for your life. And I've appointed you for this purpose. Do you understand that? It's like, how could we not trust and feel the power and the glory of God in following his moving us into new things, or into speaking to somebody, or moving into the calling that he has for us, when he's formed us and he's sanctified us and he's appointed us exactly for these purposes? And he has. He says, I've called you for this moment. If I'm speaking this to you, if I'm asking you to do it, do you think that I don't know you? Do you think that I don't know who you are or who I've created you to be? Do you think that I just met you? Or do you understand that this is exactly what I've created you to do? And you will have what you need to do it. Not necessarily because you've got it, but because God's got it. Because he's got everything that we need. And God spoke all these things to Jeremiah right before he asked this question, but he still asked it. And I think it's the same struggle for us. I mean, God, he's spoken things. He's written these things in his word that we read, and that he's for us and he's not against us, that he's given us the strength to move forward in his will. And all these things we read, and we still ask the question, God, I don't know if I'm ready. God, I don't know if I'm old enough, if I have the knowledge. And he's just like, listen, it doesn't matter, because we're going to go do this, and it doesn't take your knowledge, it takes mine. You don't have to have the strength in yourself, you just have to have my strength. And you've got it. And you've got it. You just need to hold on and understand that I am with you and I will never leave you or forsake you. But the Lord said to him, after he said, I'm a youth, I don't know if I got what it takes. After we say, I don't know if I have studied enough, or I don't know if I'm ready, God. After we tell that to God, God says this to us. He says, don't say that. Don't say I'm a youth. Don't say I don't know, or I haven't taken the course yet. Don't say I don't know if I have the knowledge or the skills yet. But he says, you shall go to all to whom I send you. And whatever I command you, you shall speak. Don't be afraid of their faces, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. See, the emphasis in these statements, it's not about what Jeremiah has. In us, it's not about what we have, it's about what God has. He says, don't be afraid. Don't worry about it. Don't say I'm too young or I don't have what it takes. He says, I'm going to send you to do these things, and I'm going to put the words in your mouth. I'm going to put the strength in your muscles to go do the work that I have for you. I'm going to put the wisdom in your head, the knowledge, the things that you need. I've got it. Don't lean on your own understanding, but lean on his. Our understanding goes so far. There's really smart people in the world. But no matter how smart you are, no matter how much you think you know, that only takes us just a little ways down the road. But God is all over the road, like Matt said after worship. God is time. He's there. He's in every moment, in every place. He's there with us. Can we understand that no matter where we go, where we walk to when he's asking us, it's not that we're going to walk out there and God's going to be like, oh, you walked and followed the things that I've asked you to do, but I'm not there yet, so, hope you can make it. He's there. He's there, and he's your strength, and he's everything that you need, and he's just saying, hey, come on, let's go. Let's go do this. Let's go do these things in the world. Let me speak through you. Let me give you the knowledge and the strength to walk out these days that you're coming into, because I've called you to great things. I've set you apart. Don't say, God, are you sure? I think about, when the teacher's up in the front of the class and they're like, I need somebody to tell us what this chapter of the book means. They're like, hey, why don't you tell us? And you're like, huh? Who, me? You must be pointing to that person behind me, right? And we even had, I don't know, maybe it was Lila or somebody that I believe that they came and they said, well, the teacher asked me, and calls on me. And I'm like, but do you understand that so many times whenever the teacher calls on you, it's because they trust you and they think that you actually have what it takes to answer the question? Most of the time, unless the teacher's mean, and sometimes they call on you when they know you don't have the answer. But that's not God. But he's like, I know. I'm calling on you. Do you think that I don't know that you have what it takes? Because I've created you. Remember? I formed you. I held you tightly in my hands before you were that flesh and blood that you are now. So how could you think that I don't know where you're at right now? That I don't know who you are right now? And know that we can do this. And know that you have what it takes. And know that we can move forward and change the world around us. He says, I know you. We didn't just meet. In Hebrews 13, 5 and 6, it says, let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Be content with the things that you have. Don't question and don't say, oh, well, once I get this, or once I learn this, or once I'm old enough, or once, you can't go backwards. Once I'm young enough. But know that God says, hey, I've given you the things that you need. And the things I'm asking you to do right now, these things that I'm calling you to, I'm not calling you to something that I haven't created you for. I'm not calling you to something that is outside of the possibilities for you to do. I'm calling you to the things that I have purposed and I've planned for you. I've set you apart for these things. Trust me, because I've got all the things that you need. In Romans 31, it says, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? So many times, I feel like, and I'll speak about myself, not you, because maybe you're not like this, but we come to these moments in our life, God's asking us to do these things that he's called us to do, and then we are hesitant because we don't know if God is going to actually be there for us in that moment. We don't know if God is actually going to take care of us or actually going to give us the wisdom or the things that we need to speak to that person. But he's saying, will he not freely give us all things? He gave his son. He gave his son to die for our sins, to bring us back into this relationship with him. He gave everything for us at that moment. Will he not give it now? Will he not be there in that moment with you, especially if he's asked you? Especially if it's the place that he's bringing you to. Will he not be there to be your strength? To be everything you need in that moment so that you can move forward. He's asking you to share who he is and to bring his name to the nations or to your office or wherever. But will he not freely give you all the things that you need in that moment that you're speaking to people about him? He will. Why don't you stand with me?